Good morning. So today we will start about some of the actual OOPS concepts in Java. Okay. If we get into the Java OOPS concept, or I would say the actual Java, Java specific features in the future classes. Today, the first topic that we will see is static. Now, static is a keyword in Java. Static is a keyword in Java. So what is static? A static is the keyword that you use when you declare and define a variable. Okay, you can use it for a variable, you can use it for a method, or you can use it for a block or a nested class. A nested class, we will see it's like a class inside a class. Now, what is static? You remember when we were talking about how Java has classes and each variables will be created for every instance of the class? Now, static is something we mainly use it for memory management. What static actually means is when you define a variable static, it is a common property for all the objects of the class. Okay, that is when we create an instance for a class. That's when we create an object for the class. When we say with our examples previously, when we saw an example for loop control, and when we created an object for the class loop control, we created an instance. Let me go to my Eclipse and I'll show you. But when we say static, static is common for all the classes. In a real-time example, if you take, for example, let's take a college scenario. Now you have a college, a class called college, and then you have you have a class called college, and you have a variable called college name. Then you have another variable called student. Now you have to understand that student name is going to be different for even here. Student name is going to be different for me. My name is Daphne. It's going to be different for Ivan. His name is going to be Ivan. Now suppose we both are in the same college. The college name is same for both of us, right? So instead of declaring that variable as anything other than static, we can declare it as static because it is common as a common property between for all the instances of the class. What I mean is, for every member of the college, for every instance or member of the college name is common, but the rest of the variables can change. So here, this is an example of our an example we used last week. So here, when I say here, when I declare anything else as an int a or this is not a static variable. What I mean here is, let me create a new example and to show you what it is. Okay, so you can, when we see examples, you understand, but so there is something called static variable. So here college name. Yeah, I will leave the meeting and connect back. Maybe my internet is bad. Okay, so similarly, how you can make a variable static. in our example, we were using a college name. You can also make a method static. See now, whenever in Java we create a class and we put variables in it and we put methods in it, the variable that you declare outside a method but inside the class is actually an instance variable, which means that every time you create an object, that object will have a separate memory allocated for all the variables. Okay. And similarly for the method also when you access. But when we say static, we call them as class variables or class methods because they don't change for every instance. The value they have will not change. It will be common for across all the objects. You can have 10 objects created for a particular class. All the 10 classes, all the 10 instances or objects will have the same value when it comes to a static variable. Now, in static method, the plus point of having a static method is you don't have to create an object to access the static method. You can directly call and access a static method by using the class name itself. Okay, that's what they say. It can be invoked without the need for creating an instance of a class. We will see that how that will work. We will look into it in a few minutes. Yeah, and then when we use a static method, the static method can call other static variables in the class, but it cannot access a non-static data member or call a non-static method directly, which means that when you declare a method static and you want to call another method inside the same class, which is non-static, you cannot call it directly, which is like you cannot call it without creating an object for it. We have already checked these a scenario like this. We've been working on a scenario like this for quite some time. All our Java main methods, no, they're all static. So that's why we create an object when we have to access that method inside our class. Now this and super is a keyword which we will see once we start looking into inheritance and stuff, inheritance and all of that in Java. Okay, now a static block, again, you can declare any block as static. When a block of code is nothing but when you put it inside, when you put a bunch of lines or bunch of code inside your curly brackets, inside your parenthesis, when you put it inside your parenthesis, that is your static block. So yeah, you can have a multiple static blocks in one class, and the syntax for having a static block is it has to be you will write a static block as soon as you start writing your class. You initialize your variables and then you have your static block. Yeah, and a static block will execute in the order that you are writing. You cannot change the order when you are writing a static block 1, 2, 3, 4. That is how your static block will get executed. Before we go into that, we will see an example. Now outside my class, I'm going to declare two variables. We will look at two scenarios when I say what I mean by the memory is going to be allocated once and all say we're going to have one variable. I'm going to declare a constructor now. Here, I'm going to give a value for a plus 5. I'm going to make my variable be a static. Now I'm going to create two instances. That is when we say instances, what we mean is we're going to create an object to access Java method. Let's run this and see what happens. Give me a minute. What reports are what is not happening. Okay, not assigning the values, printing the values. Let's change the value of the variables. Just printed the value. Okay, I want to change the value of each of these variables to a plus a plus 5. That will be Now we will. Now itself, when you see, when I am trying to access variable A, when I did not give an object here, when I did not give this object value here, it shows me an error. Okay, that's because we saw the word, right? A non-static method or a non-static member cannot be accessed inside a static member, which means that our Java main method is always static. And int A is actually a non-static member, and I'm not able to access a non-static member without creating an object. So I have to create an object for to access the value of A. So that's why it's showing me. But for B, even though I don't give the object, even though I don't give an object, is accepting it. Because as far as Java is concerned, value of A is going to keep changing for every instance. So it's asking me which variables or which instances value of A do you want to see? But for B, it is going to be common. So B, for the value of B to be like, the value is going to be same for every instance. So I don't need to know which instance it is. This is what I want to see. Now look, for the value of A, for both the instance, for object 1 and for object 2, the first one is object 1, the second one is object 2. The value is same. It's actually just 5. Because every time we created an object, when we created an object here and we called the constructor, the value is new. As I'm saying, it's new and it is it is only for the object 1. The value is just A. But when I created another object, and for B, first itself the value got assigned as 5. It said 0 plus 5 is 5. And when I created another object for it, object 2, it already had the value of 5, even though it over here, when I'm saying for Java, when I started my method, it is saying B is equal to 0, but the value is already 5. So 5 plus 5 is 10. So you got it. This static variable has a value that is going to be common for all the instances, for object 1 and object 2. So if you modify the value in even for one instance, it is going to get carried forward for the other instance also. So when you are with playing with static variables, you have to be careful for this. We actually use static variables and static methods only for this purpose because they are common. You don't have to keep changing and allocating memory for them for every time. One of the very good example here is like the college name, or if you have one common property, the variables are what you define to what you use to give properties for classes, right? If you have a common property that is going to be the same for across all the classes, then you use a static instance. You use the static keyword. And why static here is very important is every time you create a variable, every time you create an object, you are allocating a dedicated space or memory, telling the compiler, okay, now I have created a new object. Now, when you create the keyword new actually tells the computer or tells your compiler to allocate a memory, a place, a memory to save all the actions going to happen. So when you create new Java static and then it creates space for variables A and B. But if you create a static variable, when you use the keyword static, it allocates one memory. It keeps one memory, and that memory is shared among both object 1 and object 2. So it's very useful when it comes to memory management. It might seem silly for you right now because we are not using very complicated examples, but once you start writing big coding and when memory all comes into picture, then static plays a very, very, very important role for us. Okay, the next thing that we were seeing with respect to static is we were seeing how non-static members cannot be accessed inside a static block. And we also saw that an example here. We saw that you cannot access uh, your object in your variable A without creating an object for it. The next thing we were seeing here is more commonly we were seeing here is Java always has we were talking about Java's main method, right? Public static void main string arguments. Why? Why is Java main method always static? Or why is that the particular format for Java? Why? See, now we were seeing an example, right, where we had to create an object for us to access and use the methods, right? We were seeing here that if I don't create an object for Java static, my method Java static, I'm not able to access the variable A. I'm not able to access the variable A for how many instances I create. But if I do, even though I don't have an object, I'm not calling B with an object. Even though I'm not calling an object, creating an object for it, I can access variable B. That's what we mean by here. Now imagine if I don't have this concept, then how will uh, the compiler know which method to call first? And since we have a rule in Java that we have to create an object for us to access the methods in Java, then now if we have a main method, now if I don't have a main method that is declared static, Java has to first create an object, but then how will it create an object without initializing anything and everything? What will it be its starting point? What will what will it give the value for the variables? What will the constructors be? The value for the constructors be? All of this is a huge, huge confusion, right? For example, if you have a method here, like a class here, like a public class GFG, and I don't have this public void static main, I don't have this main method, then when I start my program, where will I start? You know, and we know that when we create an object for our class, we are calling a constructor, right? We're calling a constructor. So how will the value for this constructor be assigned? Who's going to pass the value G? Because we know that Java's main method is where the program starts its execution. So if it is going to start only in the main method, then who is going to give the value for G? What's going to be the value of G? So to avoid all this confusion, we have a standard set of programming rules that says that we must have a Java main method. Now, when I say we must have a Java main method, that is for us when we are doing a simple program, for now. There are other ways you can also execute your Java program without a main method, which is different, which will be called as application. When you develop a Java application, that will be different. Now, for example, now if I change any of this, if I change my static, I save it, I run my program right, there will be no compile time errors. There will be no compile time. You can see there's no errors on my program. But when I run it, you can see Java telling me that please define the main method as public static. It says that I don't know where to start. He's saying I don't know how to start my flow control. I don't know where to start because there is I cannot find the main method. It looks for a main method in this particular format only. So if you don't give it like this is what it looks like. It will also give you another error which tells you that either you have to have it like this or your application should be a Java FX application or an applet kind of. I think we stop with this today because the next one is about inheritance and abstract classes and interfaces. We will take the class on Saturday. Do anybody have any doubts? Am I clear enough for you people to have? If you want me to explain anything, you want me to repeat a class, repeat a portion of what we learned. Is it clear? Is it okay? If it's not clear, if you want me to repeat anything, I would really ask you all to put your hands up, stop me, and yeah, I will repeat it. Okay, so coming Saturday, again, let's keep the session open for doubts. I will continue my class, but we will meet on Saturday. Spread the word. If any of you have any doubts, you want some class to be repeated, something is not clear to you, you want extra time, whatever. We will meet on Saturday. Come to the class,